Hey, welcome back to coverage of the Monument Mythos. Quick little point, just so we're all aware. This is the second part to the full series exploration of the Monument Mythos series by Alex Kansas. If you missed the first part, you need to go to this video, The Monument Mythos, Alternate Timeline of Terrors, Season 1. Nothing is going to make sense if you continue with this video without having watched that one first, or the first season of the Monument Mythos. Now, once you've done that, or if you've already done that, which I'm assuming most of you have, then you know the drill. If you haven't stopped to watch the content in full, I highly suggest doing so, especially because the creator made playlists so you can watch it all straight through in chronological order. Once you've done that for Season 2, you can come back to me here, I'll give you 5 seconds to do so, and go. Alright, are you all set? Good, let's dive back in, because there's a lot more content to Season 2 than Season 1 and we get to make a bunch of connections and tie up loose ends. When we come back to the Monument Mythos, we're introduced to an aspect of the timeline we haven't seen yet: big corporations. The analog to Apple computers, Maize machines, is presented through a commercial advertising their personal computer, Popcorn Prime. We then receive a map of Maize manufacturing plants established each year in the US from 1960 to 1971, spreading in a sort of W pattern from the west coast to the east, starting around the area of San Francisco and leading to just outside New York. Maize and the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission issue a mandatory recall of all personal computers after outbreaks are reported. PCs are to be disposed of at the local Hazardous Tech Collection Center. This most likely occurred in the 1980s, judging by the timeline we're given next. 1960. Maize Machines is founded by Rob Carriers and Rob Wietrova, that timeline's counterpart to Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. 1969. President Dean establishes the Department of Technology, uniting all major American computer corporations and allocating billions of dollars toward technological advancement. 1970. Maize produces first personal video camera and home computer. 1972. Maize collabs with Department of Defense to make first control system for True Forces of Mass Destruction, TFMDs. It goes under Project Horn Serpent, showing a logo that follows the pattern of the Maize production plants across the US. 1980. Maize is attacked. Difficult to understand the image we're looking at, but it seems like several buildings covered in special trees, with some shooting lightning. 1990. The last American PC is shut down on national television, with the sign-off screen promising a new beginning. And in 2000, a statement we always want to hear from giant corporations whose products needed a mandatory national recall. We've learned from our mistakes. Control is confidence, and today there are no doubts. With Maize Movie Maker, now you can take control. Next, we explore Maize Factory, or we're about to, but first, we spread the word someone puts on the screen. Then we're shown some graffiti. Beware the monuments, they are all connected. We're actually in the point of view now of the vandal from Rushmore Revenge, or a member of their group. 2 pairs of legs are seen headed down the stairs and end up in a cave. They reported that the air felt charged. One of them takes out a map and examines a spot that's been censored, probably by Maize since they now own the footage. One of the intruders touches the wall, activating an electric response. The monster down here is very hard to describe. Do not visit these sites, they have not been fed in years. Filmed by Maya and Nathaniel Arnoldson. Well, look at that, we found our vandals. Arnoldson was the family name of the group in Canyon Crown, and the father was looking for his sister, Maya. He must have been Nathaniel. And guess what? We've already met Maya Arnoldson. She was the Lincoln Looker taken by mistake. Her experience in the statue may have been the event that made her join whatever organization is infiltrating monuments. The pattern for info in the video descriptions changes here too. We're no longer dealing with the archivist. A statement from Maize now indicates that several photographs of President Dean have been manipulated to protect security interests, and people are encouraged to check their Twitter account, spelled quite differently from our history's Twitter. And now, a personal favorite for a lot of people, ripped straight from the pages of last year's edition of Really Stupid News, the Suez Canal crab. March 23, 2021. The container ship known as the Ever Given gets stuck in the Suez Canal, creating an immediate halt in all supply chains and the world economy by blocking a critical route in the dumbest way possible. In the Monument Mythos timeline, on April 6 of that year, President Clinton announces a nuclear solution to the problem, broadcast through Maize News Network. With every passing hour that the ship sits there, it costs the global economy over $400 million. So, they're going to detonate a nuke in the canal to create enough of a force in the waves that it should dislodge the ship. On April 10th, the nuke is detonated. The waves go up, the Ever Given is freed, and then it tilts sideways, keeps going until it's lodged in even worse and seems to be swallowed by the land. We're shown a Twitter machine, aka T-Machine, a handheld device that appears to just be for accessing a much more scaled-down 90s-style version of Twitter. An Egyptian account reports that the ship just disappeared, according to the officials. One person says, "It got up and left. Why is everyone confused?" And then we're shown exactly what happened, as the Ever Given is now walking on appendages that make it seem like a daddy long legs. An Egyptian tweet comes in. "The Americans destroyed the Suez Canal and released a demon." Great. April 11th. A UN Security Council meeting declares that the Suez Canal crab will not be destroyed. The crab cannot be eliminated without causing great damage to the Ever Given. In this day and age, the world is unprepared for a loss of cargo of such magnitude. No containers will be lifted from the ship since low-flying aircraft cause the organism to ambulate unsteadily. Efforts are underway to carefully manipulate the crab's route through Egypt. We're shown a diagram of two barriers, which it appears the crab gets through without a problem. Then, Cairo is shown, just ahead of it. The next segment is unexpected. A presentation from Dr. Disturbing about the 2021 Cairo Tower Stampede. And you know, I could keep on being a dark media spooky guy narrator for a minute myself, but I never get the opportunity to kick back and let somebody give me a chance to grab some water and catch my breath. So here, listen to this guy instead.
Due to evacuations around the Suez Canal, millions traveled to Cairo in search of housing. In response to this migration, many building capacity limits for popular attractions were inflated. The Cairo Tower, one of the tallest buildings in Egypt, had its own recommended capacity limit increased from 700 persons to 1,000. On the evening of April 16, 2021, upwards of 1,200 visitors toured the Cairo Tower at once. Although concerns of overcrowding had been raised by several staff members, the building manager dismissed their comments. Since the Suez Canal crab would be passing by later in the evening, he also encouraged visitors to enter the upper levels of the tower, as that would provide a better vantage point. At 8 p.m., the Suez Canal crab was observed to have turned toward the Cairo Tower and proceeded to approach. Despite an alert sent out by the Egyptian government for civilians to immediately vacate structures in the crab's path, most visitors ignored the warning and stayed on the upper levels of the Cairo Tower as it came near. At 8:15 p.m., the Suez Canal crab was seen to have stumbled, and in an attempt to regain its balance, crashed into one side of the Cairo Tower, killing over 200 people. The resulting tremors that traversed the building damaged its staircases and elevator systems beyond repair. The cascade of shipping containers from the Ever Given, knocked forward by the momentum of the initial stumble, lasted for over 2 minutes, as an estimated 800 containers broke from their locks and pushed forward an additional 1,000 containers. As all 1,800 containers tumbled down through the building, the structural integrity of the Cairo Tower rapidly diminished. Falling debris and containers are reported to have killed over 800 visitors. At 8:19 p.m., the Cairo Tower fully collapsed, dragging the immobilized Suez Canal crab into the ground. In total, only 39 of the 1,189 visitors of the Cairo Tower survived. 2 of the 15 staff members escaped to safety, including the building manager. None of the 6 security guards survived. Although paramedics and police officers had arrived shortly before the Cairo Tower's collapse, the visibly unstable tower prompted them to collect survivors on the ground and retreat to a safe distance. At 8:41 p.m., a hazardous waste collection team and soldiers of the Egyptian ground forces arrived to contain survivors within mobile quarantine chambers. Due to fears of a potential contagion contracted from the Suez Canal crab, all civilians in the vicinity were placed in quarantine under the authority of Egypt's military in collaboration with the Ministry of Health. Upon impact with the ground, the Suez Canal crab and the Ever Given separated. The large wounds caused by the separation discharged thousands of gallons of seawater and bodily fluids. The hazardous waste collection team and soldiers attempted to plug the gushing lesions. However, survivors report that their efforts were mostly futile due to the team's inability to stay standing on the slippery ground. With the number of accidental falls among the troops on the increasingly wet ground, the Egyptian army diverted its focus from closing wounds on the Suez Canal crab to evacuation efforts. By midnight, the civilian population within a 3-mile radius of the fallen Cairo Tower had been completely evacuated. On the morning of April 17th, Egyptian authorities publicly announced that the Suez Canal crab had fallen in Cairo and laid in a vegetative state. Although the Cairo exclusion zone was primarily intended to prevent any media coverage of the crab and the surrounding destruction, several journalists managed to record footage of the site through the assistance of private helicopter pilots. By 8 a.m., clips of the crab were trending on Twitter. Members of the Anti-Device Association attributed the severity of the disaster to the development of intelligent devices, specifically Twitter machines. They reasoned that due to the popularity of Twitter in America, the Ever Given was overstocked with T-machines, which weighed the ship down and consequently caused the initial obstruction of the Suez Canal. On Twitter, the ADA released a vicious string of messages criticizing Twitter, Hillary Clinton, and Egypt. Along with images of the Suez Canal crab, photos of scattered goods that had fallen out of the shipping containers became a popular topic of discussion. One image of a sports car resting on top of debris would be retweeted by the ADA with the caption, "The Cairo exclusion zone is a conspiracy to keep goods in Egypt. The American people have been robbed."
Whew, okay, back for my lunch break. That was nice. Thanks, Doc. Anyway, that Cairo Tower disaster was pretty messed up, right? But now comes another commonality between our history and this other history. Loudmouth idiots on Twitter spouting conspiracies as false justifications to run around being assholes, eventually leading to actual harm that could have been avoided if their parents had raised them to use their brains instead of always giving in to their infantile emotions and then deflecting criticism by yelling, "I don't give a damn what anybody thinks." Because of course those tweets about Egyptians concocting the whole thing as a plot to keep goods from Americans didn't stay as the ramblings of the village idiot impersonating the town crier. People added on by claiming they saw a sports car at an Egyptian soldier's home, and on April 19th, it would be the day to reclaim their property. Yeah, their property. Egyptian officials had managed to catch a few intruders in the exclusion zone, but mostly they continued working on attending to the situation. Keeping people out, treating the injured, making sure nobody got any giant crab fluids on them. But on April 19th, over 12,000 Americans who had booked flights to Egypt gathered at the gates of the exclusion zone. An Egyptian officer was murdered. The gates were broken down. The Americans immediately began going through the shipping containers, finding an array of goods, including firearms. Those who weren't already armed ended up taking weapons, and it wasn't long before fights broke out. These, mixed with accidents, resulted in several injuries and many deaths, even before a twitching leg on the Suez Canal crab caused a panic, which created a stampede on the wet ground, crushing several falling people as others ran away from the scene. Then, when they met the metal barriers placed to keep them in the zone to prohibit the spread of potential diseases and violent trespassers, several more died from the crowd crush in the attempt to escape. Of the over 12,000 Americans who had arrived, only 944 survived. Now, here's where it takes a turn from depressingly realistic to wonderfully creepy. 77 survivors were found kneeling around the body of the crab and claimed they were promised by a deity that they would survive if they prayed to the crab. None, however, could explain the dead worshippers around them. These survivors would later form the Church of the Ever Given while being treated in a hospital together. The Cairo exclusion zone is now designated a World Heritage Site. So here's where we have a moment to do some thinking, because it seems the Suez Canal crab wasn't just hanging out on board the Ever Given, right? We've seen evidence already that the use of nuclear technology doesn't really go to plan in this universe. The radiation therapy on Alcatraz Island ended up spawning duplicates of Alcatraz at an alarming rate. Who's to say that use of the nuke in the canal didn't irradiate what was a normal crab and make it something horrible? After all, that didn't look like any crab, judging by the legs. It could just as easily be that the bomb woke up a monster already living at the bottom of the canal, but it's worth keeping in mind that nuclear technology was used to initiate the event and might just be the reason for this. You also may have noticed that the old anti-Dean group, the ADA, is now a new ADA, Anti-Device Association. Speaking of President Dean, here's another video in relation to the hottest commander-in-chief you never had. Dean Disaster, the story of America's worst TV hijacking. During a broadcast of ABC News, anchor Frank Reynolds informed the public to prepare for a special program the next day, as they would witness the start of a glorious adventure. People assumed that, like one fateful evening on ABC, they would receive an incredible announcement from now President James Dean, and millions of Americans sat in front of their TVs on May 13, 1969 for the broadcast.
James Dean's America is hell. But you still don't believe us. You'll hear the truth from James Dean himself.
From that moment, air raid sirens nationwide activated, playing at a much higher volume than usual, which burst the eardrums of anyone within a 4-mile radius. Extreme panic ensued, causing a rush on bomb shelters resulting in stampedes. The injured flooded hospitals, overwhelming their abilities to respond to those in need. Fires broke out in all major cities, and the number of cars running on the roads generated so much carbon monoxide that it became lethal, some of it infiltrating homes and shelters. President Dean was rushed to the underground bunker, but refused to stay, hearing the screams above. He gathered his people to shut off the vehicles on the roadways and put an immediate end to the risk of poisoning, then mobilized the National Guard to do the same. His next order of business was finding out the source of the air raid sirens. A few phone calls revealed there was no nuclear threat, which meant this was a coordinated attack. He ordered the armed forces to shut down all the air raid sirens, and when technicians arrived to do so, they discovered the bodies of those who tried in piles, forming ramps to the tops of the sirens. With all forces occupied dealing with their own sirens, shutting down cars and assisting people, there was no one to tackle an air raid siren near the White House, so Dean took it upon himself to shut it down, permanently damaging his hearing in the process, rendering him deaf. The volume also burst several blood vessels, causing abdominal hernias. In his drive to join the forces working on the emergency, he had sustained the same injuries as countless Americans who had been caught in the immediate radius of the sirens, and now would literally share their pain. The sirens would be shut down within 3 hours, and the next day, radios would relay the message that Americans in their shelters could leave. It had been a domestic anti-Dean group who hijacked the sirens, and their attack had cost so many their lives, their hearing, and their health. President Dean chose to respond to the event with a speech to be delivered not only in captions on TV, but through the very sirens that had been used against the people.
It's Jimmy speaking. I'm sorry, very sorry for what's come to pass. I wish I could bring back your friends, your family. I want to fix everything. This is not the announcement I planned for, but as you know, there are people who have it in for us. The Anti-Dean Association. They hijack our systems. They hurt people. The Anti-Dean Association is an anti-American association. I want you to keep an eye out for them. They will not be hard to find because they are very proud of their silly ideas. Find them and bring them to your local authorities. We'll make things right. We have places for people like them. This is Jimmy signing off.
In the wake of this announcement, hundreds of thousands of anti-Dean citizens would be apprehended and sent to correctional facilities nationwide, all in the vicinity of national monuments. It was a symbolic gesture, according to the documentary. Most of those detained would stay for a short period before being released, and their friends and families would claim they were rehabilitated. Their personalities had improved, they held no memory of their criminal past, and some came back with changes to their physical appearance. People were so impressed with whatever was happening in the correctional facilities that they began requesting admission for themselves, despite not being ADA members. It got so bad that Dean had to issue a statement.
Hey, it's Jimmy again. A lot of you want to be sent to the same places we're sending those anti-Deaners to. I get it. Those who come out of these places, they'll clean as a whistle. But if we send you to those places too, then those correctional facilities lose their purpose. If we send everyone to prison, Then what's a prison anymore? This is Jimmy signing off.
May 22nd, 1969. President Dean receives a state-of-the-art hearing implant from Maize machines. He was so impressed with the quality and ease of surgery that he was inspired to take action that would allow such a change of life for the American people, prompting him to request an emergency session of Congress. He spoke before them, insisting that they needed to bring together technology companies to manufacture the hearing aid that he'd received for the whole nation. It took just 10 hours from that point for Congress to approve the Department of Technology. By May 27th, everyone with hearing loss from the ADA attack was eligible for the surgery, free of charge. Mass rapid surgery hospitals were organized, and surgical androids were given clearance for use in these locations. Yeah, androids. Didn't see that one coming, right? And once everybody who had lost their hearing in the attack was given the surgery, anyone hard of hearing who had been that way before the attack was also granted the free treatment. President Dean effectively eliminated deafness in the United States. The country was cured by the deadline he had given, July 4th. And how did James Dean celebrate that Independence Day? Why, at the racetrack, of course, with his old friend Richard Nixon. Okay. Now that I've finished being miserable about realizing James Dean was never actually a president, let's get back to something in this truly beautiful tale that isn't so beautiful, because it is important. We know why so many of the Anti-Dean Association members came back as better people. The events of Rockefeller tree tragedy shows us that when a special tree is activated, a parallel version of a person from another timeline is brought into this one, while this timeline's version goes in their place. Almost every anti-Deaner was swapped with a timeline sibling, which is why they had different memories and changes to their physical appearance. But here's the thing, we know a lot of these monuments are meant for sacrificing people, not just swapping them between realities, and it was said that most anti-Deaners came back. That means some of them must have been sacrificed, right? After all, hundreds of thousands of them were rounded up and processed, but the group responsible for the hijacking couldn't have been that big, because they never would have succeeded without a whistleblower or a bunch of them among the ranks informing the government. Here's what I'm thinking. Faced with a group of domestic enemies who were as willing to harm the entire nation as the ADA, President Dean must have felt he needed a solution to punish the criminal element while eliminating the possibility of others picking up violent actions in their stead. The entire realm of anti-Deaners had to go, not because they were political opponents, but because they were genuinely dangerous and willing to hurt their neighbors. Changing their minds wasn't an option, but changing who they were and putting them in a reality where Dean wasn't president, which is what they wanted, would be a way of solving the problem without killing or imprisoning the nonviolent. They'd pay a toll, obviously, but they would be alive and be free. As for the ones who didn't make it back, the perpetrators of the hijacking, yeah, feed them to the monsters. What they did was too evil and far too anti-American to tolerate. The scale of the damage, death, horror, and the blatant infliction of harm was too great, and keeping a group like that alive to bring the temptation of breakouts by living outsiders or the issuing of new orders from inside was too much of a risk. Is it a messed up thing that President Dean did? As far as the members of the ADA who ended up as monster food go, nah, we love to see it. Team Jimmy all the way. As for the replacement of hundreds of thousands of Americans, that's a little insane. I understand it, but I don't agree with it. There are much better ways to go about dealing with that element than evicting them from their own reality, even if it gives them an aspect of reality they do want. It's an interesting issue to think about, that's for sure. And now, back to the weird shit, with the entry Starry Sphinx. We open with a message about a TFMD on Mars, showing us an Egyptian Sphinx on Mars. Yep, there's a Sphinx on Mars. You'd better believe it. The Egyptian monument leaves the planet and makes its way to Earth, then drops false children which organize into the shape of the Starry Sphinx, and distracts observers as the mothership flees. Meanwhile, we're presented an interview with Leonard Moreland, the Lincoln Looker info guy, which was recovered from an arson scene. Egypt was against an excavation that America wanted. Egyptians insisted their system worked for thousands of years and would continue protecting their country. Turns out the excavation was for the pyramids, which the US deemed true forces of mass destruction, making their excavation inevitable. You see, the ancient pharaohs appointed workers called guardians, who would spend years of their lives cutting the trees with Giza glass blades. This wasn't to cut down the tree, but to make it focus on repairing the damage instead of growing. The ancient Egyptians knew they could not permanently halt the tree's germination, but by prolonging their growth, the Egyptians bought themselves time to build enormous towers that would better contain the trees. It was discovered that the pyramids did not extend into the ground as far as we thought. They went much, much further. They weren't pyramids at all. They were towers which contain an enormous species of metaphysical flora. As a result of the visitation by the Martian Sphinx, the pyramids rise out of the ground, extending horrifically high. We're left with a diagram of the Starry Sphinx versus the trees that are now revealed by research, produced by the Anti-Device Association. Scary situation? You bet. The title of the next entry is Giza Guardian, but it actually focuses on much more than that. We begin with a stream of the Starry Sphinx on July 4th, carried through Maize News Network. The Sphinx lays down, and when its orbs touch the ground, that's not a euphemism by the way, the formation changes. The orbs stretch up, unfolding end over end until they've all unfurled and bent over, forming arches. A massive flash of lightning takes out the camera feed, and we carry on to another Dr. Disturbing video, Project Giza Guardian. Throughout the 19th century, stories were told of lightning strikes near the pyramids of Giza, which only occurred under formations of a certain unknown constellation. When lightning struck the sand, it formed a strange mineral called Giza glass, which was collected by members of the Bedouin tribes in the area, the only people who knew the constellation that generated the glass. In the 1870s, British Egyptologist Flinders Petrie discovered the constellation that came before a Giza glass event, and organized an expedition 3 years later to beat the tribes of the harvest. Petrie and his men succeeded, but had to break large sections of the glass for transport. In the process, he slipped and fell on an upright piece of glass, and was beheaded, but somehow survived, his head still blinking and mouthing words. The troops collected his body and head, but became concerned when the head began to take on a strange color and swell significantly. Dr. Disturbing cuts away from telling us what happened to Petrie there, which kinda sucks because that's actually a disturbing story, but at least the rest of the info is valuable. Petrie's lot of Giza glass was taken back to England, but further shattering during transport meant the museum didn't want the material. They decided to hand out the glass, with the first recipients being some visiting Americans. Then President Rockefeller ordered the confiscation of the glass from the American ambassadors, aware that this was no ordinary material. He decided that segments of the glass would be refined into blades and given to a group of Greco-Egyptian swordsmen. They were assigned to guard restricted areas of the Grand Canyon from trespassers for decades, and anyone who was injured by their Giza glass blades was given vinegar to control the side effects. But since the ability to treat the side effects lessened over time, those afflicted were granted shelter inside the Grand Canyon, on one condition. They would lure unknown, dangerous persons wanted by the government to the forbidden zones of the canyon. The government says Project Giza Guardian was shut down in 1969, but sightings of the swordsmen continue to this day. Next, we have an interview with Louisa Crawford, wife of Thomas the sculptor. Thomas apparently hated America. He left for Rome when he was 21 and thought it was ridiculous that a slaveholding nation wanted him to make a statue named Freedom. He chose to give Freedom a liberty cap, a symbol of Roman slaves who had been freed. He wasn't happy when he was told to remove the cap, but took the project anyway, and went to Egypt to find material for the sword, Giza glass. He had an accident with it once, slicing off the top of his finger, but felt no pain and no blood. He could even control his severed fingertip. One night he came home without a hand, and said he could still control it back at the workshop. It's here we learned what actually happened regarding Thomas and the statue. Inspector Zafina was wrong, Mrs. Crawford explained. The statue had Thomas's eyes because he had cut up his own body and put it inside Freedom. On the issue of Nina, we now understand what Mrs. Crawford does. The Giza glass was used on her, which is why her remains seem neatly folded around the statue. Inside Freedom, Thomas and Nina are protecting America, together. A report follows by the prior members of the Delaware River Journal, who were shut down for their story about Washington. Following the ADA's attack on Dean's presidency at the Capitol, the Freedom statue, which killed over 150 of the treason weasels, is now headed to the Grand Canyon. A journalist from the New Delaware Journal leaks a classified file. The header? Attract and extinguish ADA members and other curious persons. Protect Maize assets. What follows is a diagram of the Freedom statue carving a path through the Grand Canyon, beheading ADA members, ending with someone familiar. Maya Arnoldson. An audio clip from a device recovered by park rangers in 2004 features the last words of Maya, which are mostly just her pleading for her life. Her body was recovered, but her head remains missing. So this video brings us a lot of information. First, there are motherships delivering special trees to Earth from space. It also appears that the Starry Sphinx was always there. It was the constellation that was making the lightning that created Giza glass. We also got confirmation about the Freedom Statue really being alive. It was Thomas inside, and soon after, Nina. It's unknown whose flesh the pair used to finish the sculpture before arriving in the US, but deep inside, it's a father and daughter. Or their remains. We don't know how sane they might be anymore. As for their fate, they ended up in the Grand Canyon, creating the canyon crowns with a sort of Giza glass. Beheaded ADA members had their bodies discarded and their heads expanded over time, becoming the huge balloon creatures that live there. It certainly explains the smell of vinegar whenever a crown passes. When Lauren Arnoldson and her family visited, their father was looking for his sister, Maya. We now understand that they were probably both ADA members, and he was looking for his sister there because she became a canyon crown. The video Fallen Father serves as a kind memorial from a child to their father, choosing to use their art form to honor their memory. In the text, we find it's by Lauren Arnoldson, who indicates that her father, Nathaniel, didn't come back from the Grand Canyon. There are some strange scenes outside, which, to be quite honest, I'm not really able to interpret, aside from the idea that Nathaniel was beheaded by Freedom and followed them home as a canyon crown. Speaking of the canyon crowns, this next one is a doozy. We hear from Dr. Disturbing again, who is back to YouTube 3 months following the death of his father. Wait, didn't Lauren Arnoldson have a brother who went with her to the Grand Canyon? She did, didn't she? Is Dr. Disturbing actually Nathaniel Arnoldson's son? I guess we'll get possible confirmation on that one later. We're introduced to part 7 of the Rockefeller tapes, in which Rockefeller describes the sight of a German air vehicle bearing his name, a thank you from the German forces for his contribution to its development. Disgusted at the result of his actions, he asks for his name to be stripped from the blimp and all the others in the line, then goes on to explain how it came to be. It had been Rockefeller's personal mission to reinvigorate the American economy. During World War I, he saw an opportunity by making secret dealings with the Germans, choosing to sell them a load of canyon crowns for a tremendous German sum, which were placed inside the blimps to make them float. In doing so, Rockefeller helped create the deadliest airships known to man, which were later used to kill American forces and their allies during the war. Rockefeller knew the day would come when the American people would learn he was responsible for the blimps, and they would demand his death. The president that followed him bought time by covertly seeking the elimination of every single Rockefeller airship, using a unique form of death ray that had a very strange item in the lens. Operation Pyramid Plasma was conducted to take out one of the ships, which saw the anti-airship death ray placed at the top of the Great Pyramid in Egypt. At this moment, we understand the Great Pyramid is secretly hiding a massive special tree, and it's not a good idea to do anything crazy in the vicinity of those trees. The death ray doesn't seem to have a direct energy component to draw from for eliminating the target, which tells us it's probably using this special tree inside the pyramid itself. A truly bad idea. Several men were needed to operate the ray, and they successfully took out Rockefeller 70. As a result of the operation, the 17 men overseeing the ray were disintegrated, divided into microscopic parts and scattered in the desert in a semi-conscious, unstable form. They eventually found each other, forming an amalgamation, fusing into one being. As one, the men returned to their homeland, and in Stage 5 of the aftermath, they retaliated, executing a counterattack. On May 23, 1937, President Rockefeller entered a bunker under his plaza and was never seen again. Investigators found the door to the bunker melted open with possibly the most powerful heat ray ever built. Only 2 photos of the potential suspect were ever released. One is from the site of the special tree Rockefeller had taken from Babylon Forest. The other is from a Christmas tree celebration in Rockefeller Plaza. In both instances, the suspect is a glowing, translucent figure, resembling a human nervous system made of light. This is the amalgamation, who had been haunting Rockefeller ever since his presidency, and chose to strike once the news came out that let them know he was responsible for their condition. Washington Wonderland brings us back to Virginia, the girl who switched realities. After an unsuccessful lobotomy, Virginia Fate Arnoldson, yes, Arnoldson, like Maya and Nathaniel, provided a more complete account of the Rockefeller tree tragedy. Following the switch between realities, Virginia's parents abandoned her, unable to truly see her as their daughter. Her foster parents likewise chose to leave her shortly after, resulting in Virginia ending up at an orphanage. Many of her friends ended up sharing the same fate. They stuck together until aging out of the system, with the military taking the boys and the doctors taking the girls. Virginia informs us then of what things were really like in the forest of special trees.
When the tree changed me, I was not scared. At first, I did not know what was wrong with me. When my eyes adjusted, I was in a field of special trees. I was reminded of a story my ma told me. Alice in Wonderland. This was my Wonderland. I held myself close and looked up. The trees looked like they ended, but above them there were upside-down trees, and above those there were upright trees, like they were being reflected forever. The pattern repeated for as far as I could see. I looked down, and I thought I was on solid ground, but when I looked more closely, I was sitting on a thin, floating layer of dust. It smelled like baby powder. And through the dust, I could see the start of another tree. And below that one, there was another and another, an infinity of trees. While I played with the dust, I heard distant footsteps. They grew louder and louder. Then there were bright flashes of light all around me. Out from these lights, hundreds of people ran out. One man came up to me and whispered, "The trees are not the trees." He had such sad, tired eyes. As he picked me up and put me on his shoulders, he said, "You could be her. Anyone could be her. I promise I will not leave you." There was a bright flash, and we were in another field. He was sitting in front of me with his hands out. Another flash, and we were both running past through the woods. Another flash, and we were both lying on the ground, looking at infinity. Every few seconds there was a flash, and we would be doing something else. Again, and again, and again. Over and over and over. It would not stop. It felt like forever. Years of flashes. I was so angry at first. But soon I had those sad, tired eyes of his too. We were so sad and tired. Every now and then we would flash to another layer of dust, above or below, who knows. But we would always see the climbers. I think there were people who tried to climb the trees while they were flashed around. They were stretched and burnt. Maybe the dust was the people that fell. The man was always with me. He kept me safe the whole time. It must have been years. It felt like 500 years. I named him Everett. He was always there. He never left me. Everett was my best friend. Then on one random day, no time, one random time, all the trees bent, and a flash brought me back to New York. All my friends were around me, but this was another New York. I did something wrong, and I lost Everett. I ruined everything.
When Virginia was 18, she went looking for her new parents. Her father had died of a broken heart, and her mother lived in isolation. Virginia wanted her old parents back and went to Rockefeller Center, where she spoke with a tree.
The tree stood at the top of the plaza, above everyone else. I was never supposed to visit again, but I did, and I spoke to her. At first, I could not understand her. Her voice was like a breeze behind my eyes. It was cold, and I could not move. But soon, I could understand. She said that I had to be ready to exchange one life for my own. She understood that I wanted to go back home, to my New York. She said, come back in 3 years. And I did. I waited 1,095 days. I returned 3 years later.
Virginia comes back, and the sequence is the same as last time. In fact, it happens 2 more times. It took her over 6 years and was about to be 9 years, but something happened while she was waiting during the 3rd period. She met a man, a secret agent who followed her everywhere. One day, she found him waiting inside her house, where he confessed that his job had become more than a job. He'd fallen in love with her. His name was Leonard, and with no one else in the world she was close to, Virginia came to love him too. She became pregnant with a baby boy, and she named him Everett. Virginia was 9 months along when she visited the tree again.
She put directions in my head. I followed those directions. I walked for 4 days. I had to. I wanted to go home so badly. But I became so happy when I could hear the music. It was like the tree's voice, but warm. The Washington Monument looked much bigger in person. Its door went up high, like it was for something much bigger. Then I went inside. There were bodies everywhere. The breeze told me to relax. I went on the elevator. It went up. All the way up. It stopped at the top, and the music blared. It was so loud I could not move. The floor opened, and I fell all the way down. I felt myself hit the ground. Then I kept drifting down, past the ground, past rock, sand, and magma, through the layers of earth. It must have been years. It felt like 500 years. When I reached the other side, and I felt myself rising through all the layers of earth, past the magma, sand, and rock, past the ground, back into a body, another body, almost the same body, and flattened like a little red pancake. But I felt so empty. My belly had sunk. Little Everett was not with me anymore. Many others laid around me, broken like me, almost alive and completely still. But little Everett was nowhere. While everyone else exchanged for their own lives, themselves, I must have exchanged little Everett for mine. I cried. I cried for years. We all bled into the ground for years. Why did the tree keep us alive? Did they like pain? Did they drink our blood? Was there any reason for any of it? I lost little Everett. He had no say. He did not even say his first word. I ruined his life from the start. Maybe he lives in Wonderland. I hope he lives in Wonderland. One day, one random day, the music grew, and there was the brightest flash. We found ourselves outside, at the base of the tower. The tree had been freed, and we were in a field of trees. Wonderland had risen, but little Everett was still missing. We were all lifted out in helicopters. I was at the hospital faster than ever before. They told me it was 2003. They told me everything I knew was wrong. They told me everyone I knew was dead. And now they plan to fix me. I'm sorry, Pa. I'm sorry, Ma. I'm sorry, friends. I'm sorry, Leonard. I'm sorry, Everett. Please remember me. Please, please remember me.
After her second lobotomy, Virginia never spoke again. Later in her life, she produced a series of paintings titled The Right Life. They feature prominent figures: her parents, her friends, Leonard, Everett, and everyone together. Virginia passed away in 1980 at the age of 59. Her son Everett is believed to be the 20th Washington absentee. A statement from Maize is given. Everett Arnoldson, commonly referred to as the 20th Washington absentee, is a humanoid creature that is purported to inhabit the forests of the Washington Zone. Have you ever seen Everett? This is a little hard to unpack, so we'll start with the easy connection to understand first. Leonard is a character we've already seen. He's Leonard Moreland, the former senior advisor who informed us about Lincoln Lookers and the truth behind the pyramids. Now, regarding 20th Washington absentee Everett, that's difficult to wrap our heads around. He was in the womb, but he's recognized as an actual presence at the monument in one of the realities. Furthermore, Virginia was told when she came through that it was 2003, but we're informed she died in 1980 at the age of 59? Which version of her? And if Virginia is providing the information about her journey before a successful lobotomy, which version of Virginia is giving that story? Because this could easily be either one, seeing how Virginia, in both realities, was swapped out by the Rockefeller tree while placing an ornament. How can we have a record of her from 2003 and facts about her death in 1980? Are we being given documentation from both realities in one video? And the music of the special tree. The effect it has seems very different from the lightning. Virginia wasn't electrocuted when she hit the ground. She seemed to phase through it. In fact, all of the Washington absentees disappeared. They had no swap-outs from other realities. There are elements of the tree's powers we don't understand, and it's produced a very difficult situation to wrap our heads around. I'm less concerned with Everett and more concerned with trying to understand how this even works. This is so tough. Let's keep moving forward. Maybe something will shake out that helps us. Remember the Air Force One Angel? This footage relays the strike by the US Air Force against the unmanned Air Force One as it finished its trip to some monuments. An odd map of the US is shown in the process, revealing that it's been divided into 3 sections, legally known as the United Zones of America: the Alcatraz Zone, the Rushmore Zone, and the Washington Zone, with a capital in each. What follows is one whacked-out video. The unification of 1980 was short-lived as state borders were restored by the end of the decade. However, due to the extent of the unification of 2003, state borders are not expected to be restored within the century. The ADA refuses to recognize the three zones and their capitals. The picture taken at the tomb of the unknown soldier reveals the identity of the Air Force One Angel. It's the amalgamation of the soldiers from Operation Pyramid Plasma, who exacted vengeance on Rockefeller and seem to have dedicated their afterlife to exposing the truth about the monuments. It is now also within the hands of the ADA. Regarding the unification points and the united zones, I feel like there's crucial history here we aren't being told. Unification of 2003 leads us to believe that the actions of the Air Force One Angel are involved. The connection we can make now as well is why it smells like baby powder at Rushmore and why it looks so odd. We seem to have a major bleed-through of Virginia's Wonderland. Either that or the natural forest floor for a group of special trees looks like that. The whole World Egg ADA thing is really odd to consider now, but we've seen that serpent idea before. Remember this fact from the Maize movie maker video? 1972. Maize collaborates with the Department of Defense to initiate the first system to control true forces of mass destruction. They come up with Project Horned Serpent, and the pattern is a cut-up serpentine dragon with body parts roughly following the pattern of Maize production plants, which we know are guarding secrets. The ADA declared that it was time for the underground god to leave. He does not belong here, but the world egg cannot hatch without force. They have to fracture the zones themselves, split the earth open. No more zones, for the cracks will be the true borders. 1,000 states of America are 1,000 states of peace, and they'll use their fallen angel to do it, their walking atom bomb, who will evict the horned serpent. And again, their logo, a serpent wrapped around an egg, crossed out. The horned serpent, some underground god, is what they want evicted, and it must be that in some way, Project Horned Serpent is keeping this world egg from hatching. Just how long has the ADA been using the Air Force One Angel for their agenda? What is it about hatching the world egg they want so badly? The idea of cracking the nation into 1,000 pieces doesn't seem very awesome. Now, let's finally circle back to the Statue of Liberty, which you'll remember holds something much more horrific than a special tree. The video opens with info on the Statue of Progress, a colossal sculpture at the entryway of the Suez Canal. It was designed by the same man who created the Statue of Liberty. Ferdinand de Lesseps, the developer of the canal, is heard speaking next in an interview recording, talking a lot about his inspiration and dreams for the canal. Then, it takes a turn. Until now, what you heard was from a speech I wrote for the grand opening of the canal. I could not bring myself to lie to everyone. I did not choose to build the canal. The man beneath America ordered me to. Any night, he can sink into my dreams. We're then shown an animation by the ADA, The Sinking Man and the Forbidden Fruit, from the Book of Ferdinand 29:3. It shows a colonial man with an axe rotating around a fruit tree, with some ground covering at the base that resembles baby powder. Suddenly, he sinks below the surface, finding himself upside down and in a plane with another tree, and another, and another. Immediately we get the picture. He's in the world of special trees, meeting end over end, just like in Virginia's Wonderland. But something different happens here. The man stretches, becoming horribly long, reaching the height of all the trees on the screen. We return to the Statue of Progress, followed by a statement about the surviving audio recordings of the 1889 Liberty Lurker interview with Liberty's designer being fake. The authenticity of one recording, however, continues to be disputed. To the Providence I confess, it is a heavy burden that I cannot share with the world, but I cannot keep carrying it on my shoulders all alone. The most difficult part, the most painful, the one that made my sleep go away and my hair go gray, was the construction of the pedestal. But I know why the pedestal is so massive, so tall. I simply cannot bring myself to tell them the truth. I am not strong enough. The truth being that I designed an abattoir just for him. Grant told me that he used to be normal like us. He called him the Horned Serpent, the Devourer of Villages. It was the name given to George Washington by the hierarchy. This was no coincidence. Their damned founding father locked up in my foundation. 1985. Following the release of the Liberty Lurker, Thonauts surveyed the environment beneath the Statue of Liberty's pedestal. They recorded the following video inside the Horned Serpent metastructure, colloquially known as Wonderland. And it is indeed Virginia's Wonderland, the forest of special trees that stretch up and down forever. So, what does it mean? the builder of the Statue of Liberty told us, a version of George Washington, who used to be human, is inside of it. He is the horned serpent. The ADA's animation wasn't showing any man. It was showing George Washington trying to chop down a tree that was not a cherry tree and being taken into the Wonderland, where he grew to horribly long proportions. Probably because, like Virginia had once seen from a person's mutated remains, he tried to climb it. He was the man beneath America, convincing prominent designers and dreams to build monuments. He was the underground god that the ADA wanted free. And if there really was some insane event that resulted in Washington crossing the Delaware and later showing up frozen, maybe another reality's version of him got trapped in the Wonderland, ended up as the Horned Serpent, and became the nation's most horrific secret. As for why Project Horned Serpent shows pieces of the snake across a load of Maize hiding places, well, maybe Washington's form is bigger now than we could ever imagine. Or maybe, just maybe, someone used Giza glass in a way they never should have, and sections of Washington are everywhere, like some kind of sick American version of Exodia, the Forbidden One. Oh man, this is one messed up project, you know that? Okay. Now at last, it's time for the big finale, a culmination of many of the insane elements we've witnessed so far. We begin with an ominous opening quote from Thomas Jefferson we now understand quite differently. The tree of liberty must be refreshed from time to time with the blood of patriots and tyrants. The final upload of Dr. Disturbing is presented, Dad's Favorite Things, showing us the following paintings. Apotheosis of Washington, Road to Happiness by James Dean, and Together by Virginia Arnoldson. We're left with a quote, I hope I see you soon, Dad. 3 days after upload, the remains of Lorne and Quinn Arnoldson were discovered in the Grand Canyon. The siblings were last seen riding on 2 astonishingly large balloons. According to park officials, the balloons encountered an unexpected crosswind, which caused both siblings to fall to their deaths. That tells us 2 things. First, Dr. Disturbing was Arnoldson's son. Second, Quinn and Lorne returned to the Grand Canyon to be with their father and aunt, and rode them into the sky before falling to their demise. Next, we have the last broadcast of the New Delaware Journal. Leonard reveals that the ADA has kept him captive for years, forcing him to read their scripts for the Old Delaware Journal. You have heard me read about Lincoln Lookers and the Starry Sphinx. Those were their words in my mouth, but they did not keep as close an eye on me as they should have. He was able to read his own scripts through the New Delaware Journal. 3 nights before his death, which he knows is coming, Alcatraz went stealth. It had expanded shockingly fast, and mimicked the environment on a subatomic level to appear invisible, spreading to the East Coast. Leonard says he's finished the last batch of tests and can confidently say he's not the same person he was 3 days ago. Alcatraz had copied us all overnight. Every particle of this country and its citizens replaced. The United States is the ship of Theseus. Inside my skull is Alcatraz's fleshy reproduction of my brain. I will not live with a copy of myself. Better to extinguish myself now than to live a lifetime as something else's handiwork. I heard fire does the trick. Maybe I'll see you in the next life. For Everett, for Virginia, for America. Though not A will receive data, he will convey it to you in a theatrical manner. He will arrive in your world after our apocalypse, 2:22:22 in ours, 10:1:16 in yours. It's worth noting that 2:22:22 was when this video was uploaded. Next, the Angel's Ultimatum. Graffiti is seen at Lincoln Memorial by the monument vandal, now revealed as the Air Force Angel, the remains of the men from Operation Pyramid Plasma. The advocates were deranged. They are all ashes now. We will never be weapons again. Leave us alone or join the ash pile. After a 2-decade search, the Angel was located in Babylon Forest, the place where a special tree was found by Rockefeller. Part 4, Operation Thunderbird. 2 androids in the Grand Canyon lure Freedom to a site where captive false children react to her presence, initiating the arcing and the lightning and all of that. Lightning reacts with a cloud of Giza gas that's been generated, locking Freedom in a pyramid with a set rate of decay. Freedom is then airlifted out to Babylon Forest, dropped inside, and left to encounter the Angel. Predicted result? Mutually assured destruction. Part 5, the actual result, the awakening of the world egg, resulting in the rapid growth of an untold number of special trees, then seen in these clumps of special trees in space, which then seem to connect, creating a blinding white light, and we're left with a note. Survivors of the Great Division are known as corner folk. Wow, I think I need to go to sleep for 12 hours now. I don't even want to try explaining that shit. And it bled into yet more videos by Alex Kansas, the Corner Folk series, so even after a whole reality collapses, you're not off the ride. That is exhausting. I'm exhausted. How long have we been at this? Screw it. I don't have it in me. I don't have it in me after all that. I'm not about to go on to another whole series now. You just forced me into playing the DLC after a 70-hour game. I'm taking 2 minutes to myself, okay? Lights out. You know, I'm not a smoker, but it's moments like these I really get this urge to step outside and just burn one down. I'm in a building, not a cigarette. When was the last time I had to deal with a kitchen sink of mind-bending stuff after a marathon like that? Ever been hybrid? This house has people in it? You ever notice how it's some of the most brutally dense stuff in this field that gains an enduring legacy? Makes life harder in this line of work, but I do love to see it. What was the Suez Canal crab even for, though? Where did it come from? What was it? Was it just a bit of fun? It was fun, but like, lore-wise, This was such an awesome, creative, effort-filled series. It did so much, and it was so smart, it was so original, and it made me take 17 friggin' pages of notes, which I haven't had to do since I don't remember when. I would punch the monument Mythos in the stomach and take it out for ice cream. What a work of art. This is top shelf stuff. Everyone who enjoys unfiction should watch it, and everybody who wants to make unfiction should study it. And no one should ever bother me about it ever again. I love this project, and I don't want to think about it again for a year. I really don't. My sanity is worse for covering this, but my overall life is better. And man, fuck Alex for making me wish for a president like James Dean, knowing full well there's never been one. That is pure heartache. How dare you give us a dream like that and tell us it was a lie? He's going to be on the racetrack forever in my heart. I miss President Jimmy. Alright, is it 2 minutes yet? Am I past 2 minutes? Well. Now comes the part where I have to get back out there and make sense of this. Wasn't Cabin Fever Dream supposed to be fun? It has been fun. I'm just enjoying the idea of what the comment section will say about this skit, thinking that I'm serious. Okay, so, what just happened? A lot of things, all at once, for a short answer. As for the long answer, in the first part, the story of the Arnoldson family was wrapped up. Period. That's it. We get that loose end taken care of, albeit sadly. In part 2, Leonard Moreland, Virginia's lover, informs us that some of the videos we've watched have had false information, so we can't even trust our own understanding of this story entirely anymore. On top of that, Alcatraz completely defied the projections of researchers growing to encompass the US, and it also had the capability to replicate and replace atomic matter outside itself, which is insane and the first time we've heard about that ability. He chooses to self-immolate, refusing to live as a copy of himself. In part 3, the angel informs the government that the advocates for the division of America are all ashes now. They've personally destroyed the organization and just want to be left alone. And you know what? They really should have just left them alone. It's appropriate that the ADA name their champion the Angel, because in part 5, Freedom's fight with the Angel basically initiated Third Impact. See, the Angel had the energy of an atomic bomb in its being, and it was hiding in the middle of Babylon Forest. The Babylon Forest, as we know, was the location where Rockefeller found a special tree, which means there were probably a lot more of them. The government took the Freedom Statue, planted it in the forest to neutralize the angel, and it blocked the angel's attack with a sword made of Giza glass. Think about that. A being of immense energy bordering on a nuke blasted a sword made of Giza glass in a forest of special trees. There was no way, shape, or form that this was going to turn out okay. And it sure didn't. The force of these two elements combining seemed to tear open the earth, activate whatever special trees were in the area, shake the planet, and hatch the world egg, which then exploded, devouring the world and replacing it with this giant mess of special trees. And maybe the other planets too, because remember, we saw the Sphinx mothership on Mars. And in our final shot, that's what we're left with. The detonation of the planet, creating a ripple effect throughout the universe, and then a giant collapse of reality. All because America couldn't leave some veterans they treated like dirt alone. Now, this event is known as the Great Division, and the survivors of it are called Corner Folk. As previously mentioned, there is a video series by Alex Kansas for Corner Folk. This video is long enough already. I'm at 14 pages of script. I know it's going to be long. But if you've got the stamina to do one more video, just one more, we'll do Corner Folk and get an understanding of what happened as a result of the Great Division. So, are you with me? Do you have the energy? Alright, one more video. Let's do this. In 2011, Riley Tillon uploaded 3 videos describing an unseen presence in his home. A 4th video in 2013 raised concerns over his safety and prompted an official investigation. Upload 1 is presented from October 20th, 2011. Riley explains how many dimensions intersect with our own, forming corners. Ordinarily, beings in one plane cannot cross into another, except for the corner folk who are able to jump through the boundaries into other planes of reality. On occasion, he's even seen them, catching photos and video. He believes the crossing power of the corner folk requires massive amounts of energy, which produces the blue flashes. We then receive upload 2 from October 27, 2011. Cameras at home captured evidence of corner folk huddling together in a corner, exhibiting micro-movements as if sleeping. He also mentions an important concept, the corner world.
I imagine that their corner world is made of many plane intersections, allowing them to move freely without using up any energy. My photographs show that smaller corner folk have odd impressions on their skin, as though they have been pressed against many plane intersections at once. The corners likely belong to a nursery or a crib in their homeworld. A multitude of corners placed in close proximity could be used to secure the infant from leaving the corner world. Perhaps they only cross corners in search of food, the same way we only leave our homes for resources. The corner world may be used to raise young, while my own house's corners serve as rest stops of sorts during their journeys. I've begun to dream of the corner world. I can't stop thinking about it. According to the calendar, I've spent entire weeks in my home, just drawing and describing the corner world on paper. I lost my job last month due to repeated absences, but it really does feel like I just left the office this afternoon. When the corner folk jump, it feels as though they're taunting me. But I'm close to a solution. Regardless of whether my body survives the forces of the corner world or not, this much is certain. The fear of my own destruction will not prevent my entry.
Following his last upload, viewers requested a wellness check on Riley Tillon. Local authorities found Tillon asleep in one corner of his room. a closer examination revealed that his internal organs had been folded along various axes, warranting immediate medical attention. During his recovery, Tillin avidly made origami, despite claiming to have never been taught how to do so. As of 2020, he remains in the care of his friends. So, did the corner world remind you of anything? It looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? Like the mesh of special trees and tendrils and whatever that spaghetti mess is at the end of the Alcatraz apocalypse. That reality folded, crushed into a corner world framework. The ADA's vision of America, cracked borders, 1,000 zones, has become their new reality, except that it's now 1,000 times 1,000 times 1,000. And the survivors, crushed by the warping of that universe, became corner folk. And that, at last, is it. Unless you want to go forward with the other corner folk videos, which, yeah, seems like a fun time. Oh, what a long, strange trip this has been, huh? Alex Kansas has created a really impactful, original series through the Monument Mythos. It's a mystery box, and it gets a bit convoluted and involves some 4D thinking, but that's obviously by design. The inability to really solve everything, I think, is also by design, and I'll stick to that opinion. There are elements to this project that simply can't be cleared up from the audience perspective, though I'm very certain that somewhere online, somebody's taken a crack at filling in all the holes enough to get within striking distance of Alex's own story Bible. At this point though, you really don't want it all solved, do you? The Monument Mythos excels on showing you pieces of a world, not explaining all of it. Leaving mystery intact just seems right for its nature. We may never know how the world egg got there, although I have a hunch that maybe that is what the whole Everett thing was about, because technically, an egg is a correlation to a baby in utero. We might never solve the paradox surrounding Virginia and how she died before 2003 when she came through the portal, or which Virginia was telling us what at what point. We don't know if the Delaware double story was a fake by the ADA or if it was real, and that somehow explains the whole George Washington kaiju thing inside of the Wonderland. We'll never get an explanation for the Suez Canal crab. There's a lot. There's a lot that will not be explained. And that's okay. Point is, are you satisfied with your journey? Did you enjoy the ride? Do you feel like you can never quite look at US monuments, or any monuments for that matter, the same way again? Then the task is done, the mission accomplished, and in ways that other creators have not attempted to do it, or even thought to. The effort involved is clear, the results are fantastic, and the fascination is obvious, both from the consistent viewer numbers on the videos to the rave reviews of the Monument Mythos in our Season 1 exploration comments. Here's to you, Alex. Through mystery, mayhem, and morbid events in the world and in life, nothing stopped you. There are moments when being a creator and a person at the same time is very, very hard, and you kept going. You're going to be remembered fondly for this. You have entertained and inspired thousands with your original, well-crafted, imaginative work. And you have undoubtedly released the horned serpent of imminent copycats and well-meaning mimics trying to spin their own versions of your story and format while showing they learned nothing from you in the process. And then I'll be dealing with the repercussions of that in the form of suggestions and look what I found messages from those same young creators pretending to be innocent fans for months. You owe me a drink now. Or at least some Tylenol for the headache. But all jokes aside, you owe yourself a pat on the back, and I mean that sincerely. Thank you, Alex, for making the Monument Mythos and making this field of art a cooler, weirder, and more mysterious place. Thank you all for watching. And thanks to my supporters on Patreon, who all live happily on an island under a giant statue of me in an ocean you will not find. Stick around to the end of this video to see the names of all these awesome creatures of the night. And remember, if you want to support Nightmind directly, you can do so for as little as just $2 a month over on Patreon. This helps out so much more than you ever know. It's extremely appreciated, and it also empowers the Nightmind Index, which makes it possible for me to catch wind of crazy news stories. And if you can't join Patreon but you're not subscribed yet, why not subscribe? You're missing out on new Nightmind content in your subscription feed otherwise. Random chance on YouTube under the algorithm is a lot more risky than hitting the subscribe button. Thanks for joining me in the dark again this evening. Once more, I'm Nick Nocturne, and I'll be seeing you again real soon. Make sure you stay away from corners and national landmarks. And until next time, sleep tight.